A girl's scream echoes as a canine dog lunges at a kidnapper's van, exposing a chilling truth. Will she escape the dark plot? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to catch our latest thrilling stories. A scream tore through the quiet suburban street as Lily Carter, 10 years old, stumbled backward, her sneakers skidding on the pavement, her eyes wide with terror as a white van's door swung open, revealing a man's gloved hand reaching for her wrist. The air exploded with a feral roar. Rex, the family's canine German shepherd, surged from nowhere, his massive frame slamming into the van's side, teeth snapping inches from the man's face. His barks a deafening war cry that froze every neighbor in their tracks. Lily's heart pounded, her backpack slipping from her shoulder, her mind reeling as Rex pinned the man against the doorframe. The stranger's fake smile twisting into a snarl, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror like a cornered animal. "Get that mud off me!" he shouted, voice cracking, but Rex was relentless, his claws gouging the van's paint, his amber eyes burning with a knowing fury that sent chills down Lily's spine. She staggered back, collapsing onto the grass, her breath hitching as neighbors poured out of their houses, phones raised, voices clashing. "What's that dog doing?" "He's gone berserk." But Lily saw something in Rex's stance, not madness, but precision, as if he'd smelled death itself. The man tried to slam the door, his arm flailing, but Rex lunged again, biting the edge of his sleeve, tearing fabric with a sickening rip. Sirens wailed, distant but closing fast, and Lily's gaze locked on the man's face, now pale, sweat beading on his brow as he shoved at Rex, cursing under his breath. Two police cruisers screeched to a halt, tires smoking, officers leaping out with hands on holsters, shouting for the man to step out. He raised his hands, stammering, "It's a mistake! I know her dad!" But his voice trembled, and Lily noticed his knuckles whitening, clutching a keychain that glinted oddly in the fading sunlight. An officer, a woman with a steely gaze, yanked open the van's rear doors, and the crowd gasped. Coils of rope, rolls of duct tape, a black duffel bag spilling Polaroids of children, their faces pale, eyes hollow, some with names scrawled in red ink. Lily's knees buckled, her vision blurring, and she clutched Rex's fur as he finally backed off, trotting to her side, his warm bulk pressing against her, his ears still pinned, watching the man like a hawk. The officer knelt beside Lily, her voice calm but urgent, asking her name, but Lily could only stare at the van, at the man now cuffed, his cap knocked off, revealing a face both foreign and terrifyingly familiar, like someone she'd seen in passing but never truly noticed. "You're okay now," the officer said, but Lily's pulse hammered, her mind replaying the moment she'd almost stepped closer, lured by the man's claim that her dad had sent him. His voice so smooth, so practiced, knowing her name, her school, even her favorite ice cream flavor. The street. Moments ago, a postcard of suburban peace, kids on bikes, neighbors watering lawns. Now felt like a stage. Every shadow a threat. The officer's radio crackled, spitting out a name. Victor Hale, wanted for abductions across 3 states, suspected in a dozen missing children cases, and Lily's stomach churned, realizing she'd been seconds from becoming a statistic. Rex nudged her hand, his nose wet against her palm, and she clung to him. Her only anchor as neighbors whispered apologies for doubting him, some filming the chaos, others staring at the Polaroids fluttering in the breeze, each one a silent scream. Lily's aunt, Ellen, burst from the house, her face ashen, pulling Lily into a crushing hug, sobbing, "I should have watched you closer." But Lily barely heard her, her eyes fixed on the woods across the street, where the sun's last rays bled into darkness. Rex's hackles rose, his low growl rumbling through her, and she wondered if he saw something, someone lurking beyond the trees. The police cordoned off the van, yellow tape snapping in the wind, and as officers bagged evidence, Lily overheard snippets. He wasn't working alone. Networks bigger than we thought. Her mind raced, piecing together the man's words, the way he'd known so much about her. Details only someone close could know, or someone who'd been watching for weeks, maybe months. She thought of her dad, away on another vague work trip. His last call rushed, his voice strained, telling her to stay near Rex no matter what. Had he known something? Was that why Rex was here? Not just a pet, but a guardian trained to sense what humans missed? The officer asked Lily to recount what happened, and she stammered through it, her voice shaking as she described the man's smile, the van's open door, the way Rex had appeared like a bolt of lightning. Neighbors crowded closer, some praising Rex, others muttering about bad luck in their quiet town. But Lily felt exposed, like a target still in someone's crosshairs. As the police hauled Victor Hale into a cruiser, his eyes met hers for a split second, cold and unblinking. And she swore she saw a flicker of amusement, as if this wasn't the end, but a pause. Rex growled again, his body tensing, and Lily followed his gaze to the woods, where a branch snapped, too loud for the evening breeze. Her aunt tugged her toward the house, promising hot cocoa, safety, but Lily's feet dragged, her heart screaming that safety was an illusion. Rex stayed by her side, his eyes never leaving the shadows. And as the last police car pulled away, Lily knew one thing for certain. Whatever had started today wasn't over. And Rex was the only one who could sense what was coming next. Lily Carter sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, the faint hum of crickets seeping through her cracked window, her heart still racing from the day's near disaster. The image of that white van and its sinister contents burned into her mind like a brand. The house was too quiet, her aunt snoring faintly down the hall. The absence of her father's usual late-night footsteps a reminder of his latest work trip, leaving her in this limbo of loneliness that had become her life since her mother's death 2 years ago. She clutched a faded photo of her mom, smiling in a sunflower dress, and traced the edges with her thumb, willing the memory to drown out the fear still clawing at her chest. Rex, the massive canine German shepherd, lay sprawled at her feet, his ears twitching at every creak of the old house, his amber eyes glinting in the moonlight as if he, too, sensed the world wasn't safe anymore. Lily's mind rewound to the van, to the man's oily smile, to the way he'd known her name, her dad's name, details only a friend would know, or someone who'd been watching. She shivered, pulling her knees to her chest, and Rex lifted his head, nudging her hand with his wet nose, his warmth grounding her. She remembered the first time she'd met Rex, 6 months ago, when her dad brought him home from a training facility, a gift to keep them safe. He'd said, his voice tight with an emotion Lily couldn't place, Rex wasn't just any dog. He'd been part of a special task force, trained to sniff out danger, drugs, weapons, even fear. Her dad had explained, though he dodged her questions about why they needed such a protector. Lily had thought it was overkill, a paranoid move by a dad who worked too much, but now, stroking Rex's coarse fur, she realized he'd been right. That man in the van wasn't a random predator. He'd targeted her, and Rex had known before anyone else. She leaned down, whispering, "You saved me, boy." And Rex's tail thumped once, his gaze flicking to the window, where the dark outline of the woods loomed beyond their backyard. Lily's thoughts drifted to her life before today, to the quiet ache of being the kid who didn't quite fit in, the one who ate lunch alone at school, who answered teachers' questions with shrugs because talking felt like giving pieces of herself away. Her mom's death had carved a hole in her, and her dad's long absences, weeks at a time for his vague consulting job, left her with her aunt, a kind but distracted woman who burned toast and forgot parent-teacher nights. Lily had learned to trust too easily, to smile at strangers who seemed nice, like the librarian who gave her extra time with books, or the neighbor who waved every morning. That trust had nearly killed her today. She stood, pacing her room, the floorboards creaking under her socks, and stopped at her desk, where a stack of old letters from her dad sat, their edges yellowed. She'd stopped reading them months ago, tired of his promises to be home soon, but something made her pick one up now, her fingers brushing a torn envelope she didn't remember seeing. It wasn't her dad's handwriting. The scrawl was jagged, unfamiliar, and the words inside made her breath catch. Keep her close. They're watching. No signature, no date, just those 5 words, chilling in their simplicity. Lily's pulse quickened, her eyes darting to Rex, who was now on his feet, hackles raised, staring at the door. She stuffed the letter into her pocket, her mind racing. Had her dad known something? Was that why he'd brought Rex home? The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, and she crept to the window, peering into the night. The woods were a wall of black, but for a split second, she swore she saw a movement, a flicker of shadow, too deliberate to be a deer. Rex growled, low and guttural, his body tensing like a coiled spring, and Lily's heart thudded so loud she thought it might wake her aunt. She backed away, tripping over a shoe, and scrambled to her bed, pulling Rex close, his warmth the only thing keeping her from screaming. She thought of her dad again, of the way he'd hugged her too tightly before his last trip, his eyes scanning the street as if expecting trouble. He'd told her to listen to Rex, to trust him no matter what, and now she understood why. Rex wasn't just a pet. He was a guardian, a sentinel against threats she hadn't known existed. But what threats? Who were they? The letter burned in her pocket and she fished it out again, reading it under the dim glow of her phone, her fingers trembling. The words felt like a warning, a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve but couldn't ignore. Rex's growl deepened, and he paced to the door, sniffing the air, his ears pinned back. Lily followed, her bare feet cold on the hardwood, and pressed her ear to the door, hearing nothing but the house's usual groans, until a faint scrape, like a branch against glass, came from downstairs. Her breath hitched, and she gripped Rex's collar, whispering, "What is it, boy?" He didn't bark, but his body vibrated with alertness, his eyes locked on the hallway. Lily's mind flashed to the van, to the Polaroids, to the man's voice saying her name, and she wondered if he'd been alone, or if someone else was out there, waiting for another chance. She wanted to wake her aunt, to call her dad, but her phone was across the room and the scrape came again, sharper, closer. Rex nudged her back, his teeth bared, and Lily knew he was telling her to stay put. She sank to the floor, clutching the letter, her heart a drumbeat in her ears, and as Rex stood guard, she realized her life had changed forever, not just because of what happened today, but because of what was coming next. The police station smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, a sterile contrast to the chaos still swirling in Lily Carter's mind as she sat on a hard plastic chair, her fingers twisting the hem of her hoodie. Rex sprawled at her feet, his ears twitching at every footstep echoing down the hall. It was past midnight, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows on the faces of the officers bustling around, their radios spitting out codes Lily couldn't decipher. Her Aunt Ellen hovered nearby, arguing in hushed tones with a detective, her voice sharp with worry, demanding to know why they couldn't go home yet. But Lily barely listened, her thoughts trapped in the memory of Victor Hale's cold stare, the Polaroids spilling from his van, and the snap of that branch in the woods that had set Rex's hackles rising. The lead officer, Detective Ramirez, a woman with a no-nonsense ponytail and eyes that missed nothing, slid a notepad across the table, asking Lily to repeat her story one more time. Every word the man had said, every detail of his face. But Lily's voice faltered, her mind snagging on how he'd known so much. Too much. Like someone had fed him her life on a silver platter. Rex shifted, his low growl rumbling through the floor, and Lily followed his gaze to the station's glass doors, where the night pressed against the panes, thick and unyielding, as if hiding something just beyond view. Ramirez noticed, her brow furrowing, and jotted something down, muttering about Rex's instincts being better than half our team. She explained that Victor Hale wasn't just a lone predator, he was a cog in a machine, a network of traffickers stretching across state lines, targeting kids like Lily, vulnerable, overlooked, easy to snatch. The words landed like punches, and Lily's stomach twisted, realizing she wasn't random, but chosen, a name on a list, a face in a file. Ramirez's radio crackled, relaying a report from the crime scene. Hale's van had a hidden compartment stuffed with fake ID, burner phones, and a ledger of coded names. Some crossed out, others circled, including one that made Lily's blood run cold. Hers, scrawled in red ink, with a date, tomorrow. She clutched Rex's collar, his warmth steadying her, but her eyes darted to the officers, to her aunt, to the strangers passing through the station, wondering who else knew her name, who else was watching. Back home, the house felt different, like a stage set for a play she didn't understand. Every creak of the floorboards a cue for danger. Ellen locked the doors, checked the windows, her hands trembling. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that locks wouldn't stop whatever was out there. She thought of her neighbors, the cheerful librarian who always asked about her dad, the old man across the street who watched her walk to school, the teenager who mowed their lawn and always lingered too long. Had they seen something, known something, or worse, been part of it? Rex paced the living room, his nose low, sniffing corners, his growls spiking whenever he passed the back door, the one facing the woods. Lily followed him, her heart thudding, and peered through the glass, seeing nothing but darkness. Yet Rex's body tensed, his teeth bared, as if he could smell what she couldn't see. She remembered the letter from her room, the jagged scrawl warning they're watching, and her fingers brushed her pocket, where it now lived, a constant reminder that her dad might have known more than he'd let on. At school the next day, the world felt tilted. Her classmates' chatter about homework and pop quizzes, a surreal backdrop to the weight pressing on her chest. She scanned their faces, searching for signs, shifty eyes, forced smiles, but found none. Only the usual indifference of kids who barely noticed her. Her teacher, Mrs. Harper, pulled her aside, asking if she was okay, her voice too gentle, her hand lingering on Lily's shoulder a second too long, and Lily flinched, mumbling an excuse to escape. Outside, during recess, Rex waited by the fence, a condition Ellen had insisted on after yesterday, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of the danger still circling. He didn't play like other dogs, didn't chase balls or wag his tail. He watched, his eyes scanning the tree line, his body coiled like a spring. Lily followed his gaze, spotting a flicker of movement in the woods, a shadow, too quick to pin down, gone before she could blink. Her breath caught, and she backed away, bumping into a classmate who laughed it off. But Rex's growl said it wasn't nothing. That night, the house was a fortress of tension. Ellen on the phone with Lily's dad, her voice rising, demanding he come home, but the call cut off abruptly, leaving silence that felt heavier than words. Lily sat by the back door, Rex at her side, his nose pressed to the glass, his growls growing sharper, more urgent. She wanted to open it, to prove it was just the wind, but the memory of Hale's van, of those Polaroids, stopped her. Instead, she grabbed a flashlight, her hand shaking, and shone it into the yard, the beam catching something, a footprint, fresh in the mud, too large for her or Ellen. Rex lunged at the door, his barks shattering the quiet, and Ellen rushed in, her face pale, yelling at Lily to get away. But Lily couldn't move, her eyes locked on the woods, where another branch snapped, closer now, deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. Rex's fury filled the room, his body a wall between Lily and whatever was out there. And as Ellen dialed 911, Lily realized the truth. Hale was just the beginning, and the real danger was still closing in. Lily Carter's breath fogged the window pane as she pressed her forehead against the cold glass, staring into the black void of the backyard, where the woods seemed to pulse with a life of their own. each rustle of leaves a whispered threat that kept her awake long past midnight. Rex, her canine German shepherd, stood rigid beside her, his low growl vibrating through the floorboards, his eyes locked on the darkness, where the faint glow of her flashlight from last night had revealed that chilling footprint, too large, too deliberate to be a coincidence. The house was a pressure cooker, her Aunt Ellen's voice still ringing from their earlier fight, her accusations slicing through the air. Your dad's hiding something, Lily, and it's why this is happening. Ellen's eyes had been wild, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone, trying to reach Lily's dad, only to get his voicemail again, each unanswered call fueling her paranoia. Lily wanted to argue, to defend her dad, but the letter in her pocket, keep her close, they're watching, burned against her thigh, and the memory of Victor Hale's knowing smirk made her wonder if Ellen was right. Rex's growl spiked, his hackles rising, and Lily's heart leapt as a shadow flickered at the edge of the woods. Too tall, too human to be a trick of the moonlight. She stumbled back, her pulse hammering, and Rex lunged at the door, his barks shattering the silence, waking Ellen, who stormed in, her face pale, yelling, "What now, Lily?" But Lily couldn't speak, her eyes fixed on the spot where the shadow had vanished, her mind screaming that someone was out there, watching, waiting. Ellen dragged her away from the window, locking the door, but the click of the bolt felt hollow, like trying to cage a storm. The next morning, the world felt like a minefield. Every glance from a neighbor, every car slowing on their street, a potential threat. Lily's walk to school was a gauntlet. Rex at her side, his ears pinned, his body tensing whenever a stranger passed too close. At home, Ellen was unraveling, her eyes bloodshot, her voice sharp as she muttered about people knowing too much, her suspicion falling on everyone, the mailman, the librarian, even Lily's dad, whose silence was now a gaping wound. Lily wanted to call him, to hear him say it was all a mistake, but her phone was dead, and Ellen had hidden the charger, claiming it was for safety, desperate for answers. Lily slipped into the garage during Ellen's nap, Rex trailing her, his nose low, sniffing the dusty corners. She rummaged through boxes of her dad's old stuff, tools, papers, a broken watch until her fingers brushed something cold, metallic, wedged behind a crate. It was a burner phone, scratched and heavy, not her dad's sleek smartphone. Her hands trembled as she powered it on, the screen flickering to life, revealing a single text message, dated 3 days ago. Lily, 4 p.m., corner of Oak and 5th, don't tell. That was the exact time and place Victor Hale had pulled up in his van. Lily's breath caught, her vision blurring as she scrolled, finding more messages, coordinates, names, dates, all cryptic. But one word stood out, network. Rex growled, his head snapping toward the garage door, and Lily froze, hearing a faint creak, like a footstep on gravel. She shoved the phone into her pocket, her heart racing, and crept to the door. Rex at her heels, his teeth bared. The backyard was empty, but the woods loomed, and Lily swore she saw that shadow again, lingering at the tree line, motionless, watching. She backed away, tripping over a rake, and Rex positioned himself between her and the door, his growl a warning that whatever was out there wasn't gone. At dinner, Ellen's silence was deafening, her eyes darting to the windows, her fork untouched. Lily tried to act normal, but the phone in her pocket felt like a bomb, its secrets too big to share, too dangerous to ignore. She thought of of his rushed goodbyes, his insistence on Rex, and wondered if he'd known about the network, if he'd been part of it, or fighting it. Ellen's voice broke the quiet, low and accusing. You're keeping something from me. Lily, I see it in your face. Lily's mouth went dry, the phone's weight unbearable, but she shook her head, mumbling about school, her lie sounding hollow even to her. Rex, lying under the table, lifted his head, his eyes fixed on the back door, and Lily's stomach dropped as a faint tap, like a finger on glass, echoed from the kitchen. Ellen didn't hear it, too lost in her own fears. But Rex was on his feet, his barks explosive, charging the door, his claws scraping wood. Lily followed, her flashlight shaking in her hand, and shone it through the window, catching a glimpse of something, a figure cloaked in darkness, slipping into the woods before she could focus. Ellen screamed for her to get back, dialing 911, but Lily's mind was elsewhere, locked on the phone, the shadow, the network. Rex's barks didn't stop, his body a wall of fury, and as police sirens wailed in the distance, Lily realized the truth. The danger wasn't just outside, it was inside her life, woven into the people she trusted, the secrets her dad kept, and the unseen stalker who knew her every move. Lily Carter's hands trembled as she clutched the burner phone, its cryptic messages searing into her mind, each word a jagged piece of a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. But the weight of it, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had planned to take her, pushed her forward, her sneakers scuffing the gravel as she slipped out of the back door. Rex at her side, his amber eyes scanning the pre-dawn gloom. The woods loomed across the yard, their shadows thick with menace. But Lily couldn't stay locked in her aunt's house anymore. Not with Ellen's paranoia suffocating her. Not with the memory of that figure in the night, watching, waiting. She needed answers. And the only person she could think to trust was Jake, the lanky teenager from 2 houses down, who spent his days hunched over a laptop, cracking codes for fun, his sardonic grin hiding a sharpness Lily had always admired from afar. She'd seen him tinkering with drones, heard him brag about hacking his school's grading system, and now, with the burner phone burning a hole in her pocket, she needed his skills, his nerve, his defiance of the rules that seemed to trap her. Rex growled softly, his ears pinned as they crossed the street, the neighborhood still asleep, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Jake's garage door was half open, a faint glow spilling out, and Lily hesitated, her heart pounding, but Rex nudged her forward, his confidence bolstering hers. Inside, Jake looked up from a tangle of wires and screens, his eyebrows shooting up at the sight of Lily and Rex, his usual smirk faltering when he saw the fear in her eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, pushing his glasses up. But Lily didn't waste time. Pulling out the phone, her voice low as she spilled everything, Victor Hale, the van, the Polaroids, the messages, the shadow in the woods. Jake's eyes widened, his fingers already itching for the phone. And when he powered it on, his expression darkened, the screen's glow reflecting in his glasses as he muttered, "This is no prank, Lily, this is deep web stuff." Rex paced the garage, his nose low, sniffing the air, his growls spiking when a car's headlights swept past outside, and Lily's stomach twisted, wondering if they were already being watched. Jake hooked the phone to his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys, pulling up encrypted files, fragments of data that made Lily's head spin. Coordinates, aliases, a grainy photo of a house she didn't recognize, and a name. Raven, repeated in multiple texts. Jake's voice was tight as he explained, the phone belonged to someone in the network, likely a scout, and the messages suggested a bigger operation, with Lily as a primary target. Rex's hackles rose, his body tensing, and Lily followed his gaze to the garage window, where the first drops of rain streaked the glass, blurring the world outside. Jake, undeterred, traced one coordinate to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, a place kids dared each other to sneak into, its rusted gates and broken windows a local legend. "If there's answers, they're there," Jake said, his eyes gleaming with reckless excitement, and Lily nodded, her fear outweighed by a burning need to know why her life had become a target. They set out at dawn, the storm rolling in, thunder rumbling as they biked through empty streets. Rex trotting beside them, his fur slick with rain, his senses razor-sharp. The warehouse loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the gray sky, and Lily's heart raced as they slipped through a gap in the fence, Rex leading the way, his nose to the ground, his growls guiding them past crumbling walls and shattered glass. Inside, the air was thick with mildew, the floor littered with debris, old crates, rusted tools, a child's shoe that made Lily's breath catch. Jake's flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing graffiti. Then something else, a stack of folders, hidden behind a tarp, their edges yellowed but intact. Lily's hands shook as she opened one, finding surveillance photos, kids at playgrounds, bus stops, her own face staring back from a grainy print, her name circled in red. Jake cursed under his breath, pulling out a ledger, its pages filled with coded transactions, drop-off points, names of buyers. Rex's growl turned feral, his body lunging toward a dark corner, and Lily's flashlight caught a glint. Metal, moving fast. A figure bolting through a side door before they could react. Jake shouted, but Rex was faster, tearing after the shadow, his barks echoing through the cavernous space. Lily and Jake followed, splashing through puddles, their shoes slipping on wet concrete, until they reached the door, where Rex stood, teeth bared, snarling at the empty lot outside, the figure gone, swallowed by the storm. Lily's chest heaved, her mind reeling. This wasn't just evidence. It was proof the network was still active, still hunting her. Jake stuffed the ledger into his backpack, his face pale but determined. And as they retreated, Rex's ears stayed pinned, his gaze fixed on the woods bordering the warehouse, where lightning revealed a fleeting shape, too human, too close. Lily grabbed Jake's arm, her voice a whisper. They know we were here. Rex's growl confirmed it, and as the rain pounded harder, washing away their tracks, Lily realized their discovery had just painted a bigger target on their backs. Lily Carter's world dissolved into darkness as a rough hand clamped over her mouth, the stench of oil and sweat choking her senses. Her scream muffled as she was dragged backward, her sneakers scraping uselessly against the gravel outside her house, the familiar silhouette of her street vanishing into the night. It was dusk, barely a day since her discovery at the warehouse, and she'd been careless, stepping out to check the mailbox, believing the police patrols would keep her safe. But now her arms were pinned, a blade's cold edge grazing her neck, and a voice, low, familiar, chilling, hissed in her ear. Stop squirming, or I cut deeper. It was Mr. Grayson, the town's beloved librarian, his gentle smile from story hours replaced by a predator's snarl, his eyes glinting with a malice Lily had never seen. Her heart thundered, her mind reeling. Grayson, who'd given her books, asked about her day, always watching. How had she missed it? Rex's barks erupted from the house, frenzied, shattering the quiet, but the door was too far. Ellen asleep inside, and Grayson was moving fast, shoving Lily into a rusted pickup truck, its engine already rumbling. The blade pressed harder, silencing her, and as the truck peeled away, Lily glimpsed Rex bursting through the back door, his massive frame a blur of fury, chasing the taillights, his howls fading as Grayson floored the bay, the town blurring into a smear of lights and shadows. The drive was a nightmare. Grayson's silence heavier than words, his knuckles white on the wheel, the truck lurching down back roads until they reached a sprawling industrial complex, its skeletal remains looming under a moonless sky, rusted silos, shattered windows, a house of ghosts. He yanked her out, the knife now at her back, and marched her through a gaping doorway, the air thick with dust and decay, the floor crunching underfoot with broken glass and debris. Lily's legs shook, her mind racing for an escape, but Grayson's grip was iron, his voice venomous as he spat. You and that hacker kid got too close. The network doesn't forgive. Her stomach dropped. The warehouse, the ledger, the photos, they'd been seen then, and now she was the loose end. He tied her wrists with zip ties, shoving her into a corner beside a pile of crates, the knife glinting as he paced. muttering about cleaning up before the others arrived. Lily's eyes darted, searching for anything, a weapon, a way out, but the vast, cavernous space offered nothing but shadows and dread. Then, a distant sound, a low, guttural growl, growing louder, closer, and Lily's heart leapt as Rex's silhouette appeared in the doorway, his teeth bared, his eyes locked on Grayson. Behind him, Jake stumbled in, panting, his face pale but fierce, a crowbar clutched in his hands, his drone buzzing faintly overhead, its tiny camera blinking red. "Let her go!" Jake shouted, his voice cracking but defiant, and Grayson laughed, a cold, hollow sound, raising the knife as he stepped toward them. Rex didn't wait. He launched, a missile of muscle and rage, slamming into Grayson's chest, the knife clattering to the floor as man and dog tumbled in a chaos of snarls and curses. Lily yanked at her ties, the plastic cutting into her skin, her breath hitching as Jake rushed to her, slicing the zip ties with a pocket knife, his hands shaking but steady. "We tracked the truck," he gasped. Rex wouldn't stop running. The drone hovered, its feeds streaming to Jake's phone waves, and Lily realized he'd been recording, capturing Grayson's face, his confession, everything. But the fight wasn't over. Grayson scrambled up, blood dripping from a gash on his arm, and lunged for the knife, his eyes wild, screaming, "You're all dead!" Rex was faster, his jaws clamping onto Grayson's leg, dragging him down. But Grayson kicked free, grabbing a metal pipe from the debris, swinging it at Rex with a sickening crack. Lily screamed, her voice raw, as Rex yelped, staggering but not falling, his loyalty fiercer than pain. Jake swung the crowbar, catching Grayson's shoulder, and the man roared, turning on him, pipe raised. But Lily, free now, grabbed a shard of glass from the floor, her hands slick with fear, and slashed at Grayson's ankle, toppling him. Rex seized the moment, leaping again, pinning Grayson to the ground, his teeth inches from the man's throat, his growl a promise of retribution. Jake pulled Lily back, his arm around her, both of them trembling as Grayson's struggles weakened, his curses fading to whimpers under Rex's unrelenting hold. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, and Lily's knees buckled, her vision swimming as police lights pierced the darkness outside, officers storming in, shouting commands. Jake held up his phone, the drone's footage still streaming, and yelled, "It's him! He's with the network!" Grayson was cuffed, his face a mask of rage and defeat, and as officers secured the scene, Lily sank to the floor, Rex limping to her side, his fur matted with blood, but his eyes still fierce, still hers. She buried her face in his fur, sobbing, the weight of survival crashing over her, knowing they'd won this fight but fearing what the network would send next. Lily Carter sat on the cold concrete floor of the police precinct, her knees pulled to her chest, Rex's heavy head resting in her lap, his fur still matted with dried blood from the fight at the abandoned factory. His steady breathing, the only thing keeping her from unraveling as the chaos of the night replayed in her mind. Grayson's knife, Rex's snarls, Jake's trembling hands holding the drone's damning footage. The station was a whirlwind of activity, officers barking orders, radios crackling with updates, and Jake, sitting a few feet away, explaining the ledger and photos to a detective, his voice steady despite the bruises blooming on his knuckles. Lily's Aunt Ellen stood by the coffee machine, her face haggard, clutching a styrofoam cup, her eyes darting to Lily every few seconds, as if afraid she'd vanish again. But Lily's thoughts were elsewhere, snagged on Grayson's words. The network doesn't forgive. And the burner phone, now in evidence, its messages hinting at a web far larger than one man, one van, one librarian turned monster. The door swung open, and Lily's heart stopped as her father, Daniel Carter, strode in, his coat dripping from the rain, his face a mask of anguish and relief. his eyes locking on her as he crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees and pulling her into a crushing hug, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I'm so sorry. Lily, I'm here now." She clung to him, tears burning her eyes, but the letter in her pocket, "Keep her close. They're watching." And Ellen's accusations about his secrets kept her from fully melting into his embrace. Rex lifted his head, nudging Daniel's arm, his tail thumping once, a sign of trust. But Lily's questions were a storm, and she pulled back, her voice small but sharp. "Why didn't you tell me? What's the network?" Daniel's face crumpled, his hands trembling as he glanced at the officers, then back at her, his silence louder than the station's chaos. Detective Ramirez approached, her notepad closed, her expression grim as she gestured for them to follow her to a private room, Rex trailing close, his limp noticeable but his vigilance unbroken. Inside, with the door shut, Daniel began to speak, his voice low, each word a weight he'd carried too long. He'd been a federal informant, he said, working undercover years ago to infiltrate a trafficking ring, the same network that had targeted Lily. He testified against its leaders, sending dozens to prison, but the organization was a hydra, regrowing heads, biding its time. And when Lily's mother died in a car accident, an accident Daniel now suspected was no accident, the network turned its gaze to his family, a slow, deliberate revenge. He'd brought Rex home, a retired K-9 with a nose for danger, and taken consulting jobs to stay away, hoping distance would keep Lily safe. But he'd underestimated their reach, their patience. Grayson, he revealed, had been a mole, feeding the network names of vulnerable kids, including Lily, whose loneliness and routine made her an easy mark. Lily's chest tightened, her mind flashing to every kind word Grayson had spoken, every book he'd handed her, now tainted by betrayal. She wanted to scream, to hate her dad for lying, but his eyes, raw with guilt, stopped her. And when he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. Ramirez interjected, her voice cutting through the haze. Grayson's arrest, combined with Jake's footage and the warehouse evidence, had triggered a nationwide raid. Dozens of network operatives were in custody, safe houses dismantled, children rescued from hidden basements and cargo trucks. The ledger's codes were being cracked, revealing buyers, routes, even politicians with dirty hands. But the cost was steep. Lily's trust, her sense of safety, her childhood, all scarred by truths she hadn't asked for. Ellen, standing in the corner, broke her silence, her voice shaking with anger. "You should have told us, Daniel. We could have protected her." Daniel nodded, his head bowed, no defense left, and Lily saw the fracture in their family, not just from danger but from secrets kept too long. Outside the room, Jake waited, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his drone tucked away, and when Lily emerged, he offered a lopsided grin, saying, "We're kind of heroes, huh?" She managed a weak smile, grateful for his courage, his loyalty, but the weight of her dad's confession lingered, a shadow no raid could erase. Back home, the house felt foreign, its locks and alarms no match for the fear still coiled in Lily's gut. Daniel stayed, sleeping on the couch, his presence both comfort and reminder of his failures. Rex, bandaged but unbowed, lay by Lily's bed, his eyes tracking every sound, his loyalty the one constant she could cling to. She thought of the other kids in those Polaroids, the ones who didn't have a Rex, a Jake, a chance, and her heart ached. Not just for them, but for the girl she'd been, the one who trusted too easily. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of gray and gold, Lily sat by her window, the woods beyond no longer a threat, but a reminder of what she'd survived. She forgave her dad, not fully, not yet, but enough to start, knowing his silence had been love, however flawed. Rex nudged her hand, his nose warm, and she whispered, We're okay, boy. Believing it for the first time, even as she knew the network's shadow might never fully fade. Lily Carter stood in the town square, the autumn sun casting golden rays across the crowd, their faces a mix of pride and lingering unease, all gathered to honor a hero who didn't care for applause. Rex, her canine German shepherd, his fur gleaming despite the faint scars from his battle at the factory, his amber eyes calm but ever watchful as he sat beside her, a medal dangling from his collar, glinting in the light. The mayor's voice boomed through a megaphone, recounting how Rex had saved Lily, exposed a trafficking network, and sparked a wave of arrests that freed dozens of children. His words heavy with gratitude, but tinged with the town's collective guilt for missing the evil in their midst. Lily's fingers tightened around the leash, her heart swelling with love for Rex, but her gaze drifted to the edges of the crowd, where shadows lingered under the oaks, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching, a whisper of danger that no metal could erase. It had been 2 weeks since Grayson's arrest, since her dad's confession, since the network's collapse splashed across headlines, and though the world called it victory, Lily knew that Poptrain thought nights spent staring at her ceiling, jumping at every creak, seeing Grayson snarl in her dreams, hearing the snap of branches that might not be there. Her dad, Daniel, stood beside her now, his arm around her shoulders, his presence steady but shadowed by the years of secrets he'd kept, his eyes scanning the crowd with the same vigilance as Rex, as if he, too, sensed the story wasn't over. Ellen, her aunt, was there too, softer now, her anger replaced by quiet apologies, her hand brushing Lily's when she thought no one noticed. A fragile bridge rebuilt after weeks of strain. The ceremony ended with cheers, kids rushing to pet Rex, their laughter a stark contrast to the weight in Lily's chest, and she knelt beside him, whispering, "You did good, boy." His warm nose nudging her cheek, grounding her in a way only he could. Jake, her unlikely ally, leaned against a nearby bench, his hoodie hiding the bruises that had faded but not vanished, his grin as lopsided as ever when he caught her eye, tossing her a mock salute that made her smile despite herself. They'd become a team, she and Jake, bound by the warehouse, the factory, the truth they'd uncovered, and as the crowd dispersed, they slipped away to a quiet corner of the park, Rex trotting between them, their minds already on the next step. Over milkshakes at the diner, Jake spread out a notebook, his handwriting a chaotic scrawl of ideas for a neighborhood watch, not just for adults, but for kids, a group to teach others what they'd learn, how to spot danger, how to trust their gut, how to fight back. Lily nodded, her voice steady as she added her own ideas, her fear transforming into purpose, a fire kindled by the faces in those Polaroids, the ones she'd never forget. They called it the Safe Haven Squad, a name that felt right, and by the next week, they had a dozen kids signed up, meeting in Jake's garage, where Rex became their unofficial mascot, his presence a reminder that courage didn't need words. At home, life was stitching itself back together, thread by fragile thread. Daniel quit his consulting job, taking a local position, his evenings now spent cooking dinner, playing board games, listening to Lily in a way he hadn't before, his guilt a silent promise to do better. Ellen moved out but visited often, her laughter filling the house, a sound Lily hadn't realized she'd missed. Lily herself was different, no longer the girl who shrank from the world, her voice louder at school, her steps surer, her eyes catching details she'd once ignored, the way a stranger lingered at the bus stop, the way a car circled the block twice. Rex was her shadow, his limp gone, his instincts sharper than ever. And though the woods behind their house were quiet now, he still paused sometimes, ears pricked, staring into the trees, as if he knew what Lily did. The network was wounded, not dead. One evening, as she walked Rex along the street on Boyd, the sky painted in hues of pink and purple, she noticed a man at the corner, his face half hidden by a cap, his posture too still, too deliberate. Her pulse quickened, her hand tightening on the leash, but Rex didn't growl. His gaze steady, assessing, and when the man turned away, disappearing around a bend, Lily let out a shaky breath, her mind wrestling with debate. Was it nothing? Or a warning? She told Jake the next day, and he added it to their notebook, a reminder to stay sharp, to trust Rex, to never assume the danger was gone. The safe haven squad grew, their meetings a blend of strategy and hope, and Lily found herself smiling more, her nightmares fading, replaced by dreams of her mom, of Rex, of a future where no kid felt alone. As she stood on her porch one morning, Rex at her side, the town waking around them, she felt a quiet strength, a certainty that she could face whatever came next. Not because the world was safe, but because she wasn't alone anymore. The metal on Rex's collar caught the sun, a symbol of their survival. And though the shadows might linger, Lily knew they'd face them together. From a canine hero foiling a kidnapper to unmasking a sinister network, Lily's journey was gripping. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe to never miss our latest stories. Hit the bell for notifications and join our thrilling adventures.